Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Mega Projects. This one, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, not something I have to say I knew a lot about. The writer for this channel, one of the writers, Ollie, actually suggested this and was like, Simon, I'd like to write about this. And I'm like, Ollie, if you think it's interesting, go for it. So here it is, let's jump in. It's one of the most sweeping, ambitious infrastructure projects the world has ever seen, and yet, in the West at least, it remains relatively unreported. Probably why I don't know much about it, Ollie. The massive cooperative venture between China and Pakistan will not only radically change Pakistan, but may also have far-reaching geopolitical ramifications. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, is a vast collection of projects throughout Pakistan aimed at developing ties between the two countries. I know what this is. This is part of the Belt and Road. Definitely familiar with that. These include road and rail links, power plants, dams, fiber optic cable, pipelines, even Pakistan's first metro line in Lahore. China wants to be able to move its goods quickly and efficiently through Pakistan to its ports, while Pakistan hopes the CPEC may prove to be a game changer in transforming the country and helping to alleviate many issues such as poverty and water and energy shortages. And it sounds like a bit of a win-win situation. However, critics have argued that it's a bit of a debt trap for the already poor Pakistan, with conditions heavily weighted towards Chinese interests. This, just a note from me, is a bit of a theme with the old Belt and Road. It's like, yeah, hey country that can't afford to do your own development, here's some money. And now you owe us big time, and you won't be able to pay us back. So in the case of Sri Lanka, we'll just take that port for 100 years. Thank you. Although maybe I'm just a skeptical Western man. This is often countered by the fact that this kind of statement typically comes from the more established global powers, who perhaps fear the expansion of Chinese influence around the world. It's impossible to make any conclusions on this yet, as it's something we won't get a clear picture of for many years or even decades to come. So until then, we can simply talk about this gigantic $62 billion mega project that is still underway in Pakistan. Before we look at the CPEC, we should probably start with the Silk Road Economic Belt and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road. Launched by the Chinese government in 2013, this global development project aims to significantly improve transportation and trade connections with nearly 70 countries, a way of streamlining the flow of goods out of China and across the world. The economic belt is a land route which incorporates the countries that lie along what was once the Silk Road, including Russia, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Iran, Turkey, as well as numerous others, including several European nations. The Maritime Silk Road, as you may gather from the name, is a maritime initiative, no surprises there, composed of almost every country in Southeast Asia, along with India, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Kenya, and yeah, many more there as well. The aim is to consolidate shipping routes, as well as to improve port and transportation facilities throughout these new countries. The estimated cost of the entire Belt and Road project, which is still ongoing, is thought to be around $1 trillion. To put that kind of number in perspective, only 16 countries around the world have economies worth over $1 trillion. It is an eye-boggling amount of money, and you probably won't be surprised to hear that the project has come in for much criticism, from unfair repayment schemes to corruption to lack of transparency. If anything, it has become so big it may struggle to ever live up to the hype. And we're gonna do Mega Projects videos specifically on these two projects in the future, so smash that subscribe button. Before we dive in with the background and specifics, let's just have a quick overview of the CPEC, because the number of projects involved makes it difficult to keep track, especially as some are finished, some are ongoing, some have been cancelled, and some, well, let's just put them in the maybe pile for now. The entire project aims to produce a corridor from China's largest province, Xinjiang, to two ports on Pakistan's southwestern coast, Gwadar and Karachi. The term corridor might be a little confusing, so maybe just think of it as a transportation superhighway between 2 points, with its benefits spreading out from there. But this is not an easy place to build. If you could choose any country in the world to embark on such a sprawling infrastructure project, is probably not going to be Pakistan. It is home to some of the most foreboding terrain to build on the planet, with 5 of the world's 14 mountains that are over 8,000 meters lying within its borders. To make things even more complicated, the routes pass through or near the disputed regions of Kashmir and Balochistan, both of which have seen insurgent activity for many years. On the 18th of July 2018, China launched 2 remote sensing satellites to be used by Pakistan to monitor the CPEC, officially to check on its progress. Unofficially, these are no doubt going to be used to detect any security problems. And there certainly have been problems to detect. As of 2017, it was reported that 44 Pakistani workers had been killed by militants while working on projects under CPEC. Despite having the 5th largest population in the world, with 221 million inhabitants, much of the country remains undeveloped, with roughly a quarter living around or below the poverty line. Like many countries, Pakistan's wealth remains concentrated with a select few. While there have long been pledges that the CPEC will help to address this, it remains to be seen how all of this is going to filter down. Unfortunately, some of the CPEC projects have already fallen under investigation for corruption or mismanagement, and, well, when there's corruption and mismanagement, the money's not going to the people who are poor. The idea for some kind of economic corridor was first raised in the 1950s and led to the joint construction of the Karakoram Highway, also known as the China-Pakistan Friendship Highway, which was opened to the public in 1986. It is one of the highest paved roads in the world, and is also home to the highest ATM in the world. Just a random fun fact for you there. Due to its altitude and difficulty to build, the road, not the ATM, although I'm sure that was a challenge as well, it is sometimes referred to as the 8th wonder of the world, though it must be said that that title has been bandied around the world a fair bit, and no doubt is going to come up many times on the Mega Projects channel. Nevertheless, it was an extraordinary achievement, and one that I'll go into a little more detail on very shortly. In 2013, plans began to emerge over the economic corridor, but it wasn't until the following year that the Chinese government announced its intention to go ahead with what was billed as a $45.6 billion energy and infrastructure project. Chinese leader Xi Jinping became a driving force for the project when he assumed power in 2015, and in the same year, a $46 billion agreement was signed to begin the project, an amount that equated to around 20% of Pakistan's GDP at the time. Perhaps unsurprisingly, as it's one of the end destinations of the route, the city of Gwadar has seen significant investment from the corridor. More than $1 billion was initially pledged to improve the port, but despite some early improvements, much has since stalled. The harbour area has been expanded, allowing for ships with a deadweight tonnage of 70,000 tons to now use it, while a 2,282-acre free trade area has also been completed and handed over to the Chinese Overseas Port Holding Company in 2015 on a 43-year lease. This includes manufacturing areas and logistical hubs which are exempt from customs authorities, as well as local and federal taxes. And you begin to see why some people sort of call this neo-colonialism. Anyway, work finally began on a brand new airport in Gwadar in 2019, and it's expected to open in 2022 with an estimated cost of $246 million. The Pakistani government clearly believes that the corridor will make Gwadar a major regional power, with the airport set to boast a runway 3,658 meters in length and 75 meters wide, enough to accommodate one of the largest aircrafts in operation, the Airbus A380. One of Gwadar's biggest developments yet to get underway is a floating liquefied gas facility with a planned 14 million cubic meters, 500 million cubic feet, of liquefied natural gas being converted every day to be used by the country's energy sector. The reason to build it over water and not over land comes down to cost, as it's estimated to be around half the cost of a traditional land-based facility. This will form a key segment of the 2,775-kilometer Iran-Pakistan pipeline still under construction, but as of yet, there's no news as to when it will arrive. And just a slight side note here again, the pipeline holdup is in part because of US oil sanctions which have been imposed on Iran, so a lot of that is going to depend on the US presidential election that's happening in November of this year, 2020. The 887-kilometer highway that stretches between China and Pakistan has already received a major upgrade, thought to cost in the region of $1.26 billion. Now, as I said earlier, this highway was already a major achievement, running through an area which was not only unstable for political reasons, but owing to the fact that it straddles the collision zone between the Eurasian and Indian tectonic plates, is geologically unstable too. The challenges and cost of building the original highway were absolutely enormous, with 810 Pakistanis and about 200 Chinese workers killed during the construction. A cemetery for 140 of the Chinese workers killed remains in the small town of Gilgit. In January 2010, the Karakoram Highway was blocked in the Hunza Valley near Gilgit because of a massive landslide in the area which blocked the Hunza River. So big was this obstruction that the water buildup began to form a lake that came to be known as Atabad Lake. By June of 2010, the lake had reached 22 kilometers in length and was over 100 meters in depth. Goods had to be transported across the lake by small vessels and then reloaded onto convoys waiting on the other side. Must have been some landslide. Part of the economic corridor has been to bypass around the lake and connect the Karakoram Highway once again. This bypass is composed of 5 tunnels that burrow through the mountainous region. The longest of these is just over 3.2 kilometers long, and even the second longest stretches to an impressive 2.7 kilometers, while the longest of the numerous bridges, the Shishkat Great Bridge across the Hunza River, spans 480 meters in length. The bypass, which measures a total of 24 kilometers, took 36 months to complete from its start in 2012 and cost $275 million. Apart from the bypass, the expansion of the highway has included massive upgrades from the often simple 2-lane road to large 4-lane highways, and this has been done in many parts of the country. Now, I'd love to go into a lot more detail and talk more about all of these roads and stuff, but, well, it's just too much to discuss in, well, a relatively short video like this. But it's not just by road that goods will travel across Pakistan. The country's ailing rail system has been crying out for an upgrade for decades now, with much of it built by the British dating back to 1861. Mainline 1, which runs between Karachi and Peshawar, has been set for a complete rebuild and was originally scheduled for completion sometime in 2021. The original cost of this was put at $8.2 billion, though the Pakistani government have since lowered the Chinese financial involvement in the project by $2 billion. It's hoped that on completion, trains will be able to travel along Mainline 1 at speeds of around 160 miles per hour, 257 kilometers an hour, a huge increase on the average 60 miles per hour, 96 kilometers an hour that we see today. Mainline 2, which stretches 1,254 kilometers from Kotri in Sindh province and Attock in northern Punjab, will also receive a major upgrade. Perhaps the most ambitious task of the many rail projects is the plan to build a completely new line over the 4,693-meter high Kunjara Pass, roughly following the Karakoram Highway. This would essentially connect the Chinese rail system and the Pakistani system. However, despite numerous studies on the 682-kilometer proposed route, it seems as if it has fallen down the CPEC pecking order, and it's not clear if that's ever going to happen. The Lahore isn't really along the corridor, but it's still set to benefit from the CPEC. The city's brand new Orange Line metro route is currently under construction and was originally scheduled for completion in 2017, a date which seems to be put back year in, year out, but it's hoped that 2020 will be the year that it's finally finished. Probably won't be though. The metro line will stretch for 27.1 kilometers and have 26 stations. It's estimated that 250,000 commuters will use the service every day, with that number doubling by 2025 if the metro's open. When it finally does open, it will actually be Pakistan's first ever metro line. As dizzying as some of the numbers involved in the transportation projects may be, they pale in comparison to the energy sector. Roughly $33 billion has been allocated to upgrade Pakistan's energy output, which in 2016 stood at around 24,830 megawatts. To give you a comparison here, the UK, which has a population of around 70 million, about a third of Pakistan's, uses around 35,000 megawatts a year, so a lot more with less people. Pakistan has said that it wants 25% of its energy output to come from renewable sources by 2030, but the bulk of the country's additional energy sources under CPEC is going to come from coal plants. However, there's plenty going on in the renewable energy sector to sink our teeth into. The Quad-e-Azam solar park near Bahawalpur in eastern Pakistan is one of the largest solar parks in the world. It is designed to produce 100 megawatts of energy every year and spans 500 acres. Comprised of nearly 400,000 solar modules, it cost $131 million to construct construct, but sadly, the solar park has not been an enormous success since its opening, and it consistently provides low levels of energy. This is thought to be down to the dusty environment, which has reduced the effectiveness of the solar panels by as much as 40%. We all know from the movie The Martian, you gotta dust off your solar panels. It's also been mired in controversy as it emerged lower bids for the project were rejected in favor of considerably higher bids with Chinese connections, an action that cost Pakistan a reported $20 million. Make of that what you will. Tell you what I'll make of it, Ollie. Sounds like corruption, allegedly. In terms of hydroelectric power, well, take your pick. The Suki Kanari hydropower plant, with an estimated cost of $1.9 billion, is currently under construction in the north of the country. On completion, it will be one of the largest private sector projects the country has ever seen. There does seem to be some debate as to whether this really is a CPEC project, because while it is officially listed as so, the local governments have said that because it predates the CPEC, it's technically not. When the dam is finished, it will reach 54.5 meters in height and stretch 336 meters across the Kunhar River, with a planned reservoir 3.1 kilometers in length. Another example is the Carrot hydropower project, again in the north of the country. This was one of the first energy initiatives to be started under the CPEC umbrella in 2016 and is scheduled for completion in 2021. This dam will reach even higher to 95.5 meters and stretch 460 meters in length. The reservoir that will one day occupy the location is estimated to hold 164.5 million cubic meters in volume, with a length of 27 kilometers. In total, 72 homes and 58 businesses will need to be relocated because of the dam, and while this isn't great for those individuals, it's significantly lower than many other major dam projects. It's estimated that the eventual total number of people displaced due to China's Three Gorges Dam could be as high as 1.3 million. Now, the largest planned dam under CPEC is the Daima Bashar Dam, with a massive $14 billion budget. I love how in this mega project we're just like, yeah, 14 billion there, 10 billion there, 120 million there. Whew, Chinese money. The proposed 272-meter height will be the tallest roller compact concrete dam in the world. Roller compact concrete uses the same basic ingredients as normal concrete, but with different ratios, making it drier and stiff enough to be compacted using mechanical rollers, which is providing a much more cost-efficient way to build dams. When it's finished, it will produce 4,800 megawatts of electricity. That's just over 1/5 of the country's electricity needs just a few years ago, and it will have a reservoir with a capacity of nearly 8 million cubic kilometers. The project faced numerous holdups before even getting started, with the Pakistani Supreme Court ordering the government to begin construction in 2018 in response to a serious water shortage. But even then, things have moved incredibly slowly. In May 2020, contracts were finally signed with the China Power and Frontier Works organization to construct the dam. But you're gonna have to wait a while for this one, with a scheduled completion date of 2028 looking to be increasingly optimistic. Now, believe me when I say, despite this video being a bit long, we've only really been able to scratch the surface of what has been planned with this enormous economic corridor. In terms of scope, this has to be considered one of the largest mega projects that the world has ever seen, with the potential to completely transform Pakistan. There are some very obvious drawbacks to this grand plan. Indeed, with much of the Belt and Road Initiative, you can see these. While loan repayments have typically been set low, it's difficult to know what kind of economic impact it may have on the country in 20 or 30 years' time. First world nations around the world have eyed these kinds of deals with suspicion, which undoubtedly has a basis. But as I mentioned earlier, it also seems to come from the questioning of the status quo. The future may no longer be ruled by the US and Europe, and naturally that will lead to friction as others are unwilling to give up their slice of the pie. But if we look at this as simply one of the largest collections of infrastructure projects the world has ever known, it's really kind of difficult not to admire it. For better or for worse, the China-Pakistan economic corridor is going to fundamentally change Pakistan. From road and rail connections to power and water supplies, this country is never going to be the same again. So I really hope you found that video interesting. As I said at the beginning, I didn't really know much about this one, and I found this a super interesting exploration. If you like this sort of where we tackle a collection of many mega projects as one, let me know in the comments below. If you got suggestions like this, or any suggestions at all, hit up those comments and let me know what you want to see on this channel. I do look at them, upvote the ones you like, that sort of stuff. Oh, I've also got a subreddit, so if you want to suggest stuff on there, just go to reddit.com/r/Simon Whistler, and you will you'll find that community there if you want to join in. And thank you for watching.